Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Expat Chapter. This is the first podcast from Blevins Franks, where we will attempt to seek answers to the questions that you didn't even know you needed to ask. As this is the first Expat Chapter podcast, I think we should probably start by introducing ourselves. So I might as well take the lead. For those of you who have not met me before at seminars or listened to me on the radio, my name is Rob Kay. I joined Blevins Franks way back in 1998. So I've been here now for 28 years. And I have to tell you, it still only feels like 5 minutes since I first arrived and had the meeting in London with Bill at the Old Street office. Now, I've been involved in the wealth management industry since the early 80s. So I like to think that I try and blend the experience I've gathered over those long years with a continuing thirst for knowledge and a wish to develop, even at my ancient age. Now, on these podcasts, I'm going to be joined by my colleagues Tom Marin and James Griffiths. Both are very experienced advisors, but I'll let them introduce them to yourselves. So, Tom, do you want to go first?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Marin. I'm a senior partner for Blevins Franks here in France. I've been in France now for coming up to 11 years. All of that time I've been at Blevins Franks. Initially, I was responsible for our Béziers office, which I set up around about 10 years ago. And more recently, I moved over to the Côte d'Azur with my wife and children for family reasons. And not been at the company for quite as long as Rob, but just coming up to 11 years.
Thank you very much, Tom. James?
Yeah, so I'm James Griffiths. I have been in France and with Blevins Franks for 8 years this summer. So I'm a financial advisor here in the Valbonne office. I've been in the industry for over a decade, so 16 years this year, starting off in Singapore and moving on to Hong Kong. I then did a stint back in the UK and then saw the error of my ways and came to France 8 years ago. So that's me based in the Valbonne office.
Rob, I think we should explain to the viewers where these podcasts have come from.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tom. The podcast, the idea of the podcast came really from the point when, Riviera Radio said goodbye to us. So I'm sure for all those loyal Riviera Radio listeners, our departure would have seemed very, very sudden, which is what it was. Blevins Franks have been associated with Riviera Radio for sort of over 35 years. Bill Blevins started the weekly broadcast, which back in the day were actually on a Thursday evening. I joined Bill about 10 years ago, then took over the shows, the broadcasts on my own when Bill's health started to deteriorate. And then about 3 years ago, I was joined by the two gentlemen you were just introduced to, Tom and James. Now, last summer, I think it was July, Global Media and Entertainment bought Riviera Radio and then immediately started to make changes. Anyone who lives here on the Côte d'Azur, on the Riviera, who can get a hold of Riviera Radio, you'll know now that there are presenters 24 hours a day, which was slightly different to what went before. So there's an awful lot of money been invested in it. And for that reason, Global have made lots of changes. Now, back in October, I received a telephone call from Paul Kavanagh, known to many of those people who've listened to the radio station as the headmaster. He was clearly wanting to break a subject with me because he was dithering and asked me lots of other questions. And in the end, asked me if we could cut our 10-minute broadcast down to 2 minutes. And I said to him, well, I didn't really think that we could get over the content that we wanted to communicate in just 2 minutes. So with that news, he then promptly told me that the following Sunday's broadcast would be the last one that they screen or they air. And that was it. We didn't really even have a chance to make any announcements, apologies, whatever you want to call it. But I think the last one, you did the last one, James, yeah?
Yeah, I think I was in the recording studio pretty much when you were having that conversation with Paul. So yeah, from memory, it was on the entry and exit system, sort of back towards October time last year, I believe. So yeah, that's what I did, and yeah, we've been off ever since. We have had numerous mentions or emails and comments from people that have been listening, asking where we've been. So it's nice that we can now give a bit of a reply. But given that, Rob, you're the most senior in the room in many ways, you'll be best on giving a history lesson on Blevins Franks and how we came about.
Thank you for that crash ball there, James. Yes, I suppose after 28 years, I am by far the longest member of this team. Look, Blevins Franks have been around even longer than I have. Well, not on the planet, but here in the south of France. Blevins Franks was established way back in 1975. We celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. Blevins Franks was formed initially by David Franks out of his accounting practice in North London. The original firm was actually called Blackstone Franks. That was the name of the accountancy practice in Old Street in London. David was approached by a couple who were moving to Marbella, and they were a little bit unsure about their tax position because they'd gone along to their accountants, their UK accountants, who were a company back then called Coopers and Lybrand, now part of PwC. Coopers did a synopsis of their UK situation. They then introduced them to their Spanish arm, who did exactly the same thing from a Spanish perspective. But nobody stood in the middle and said, look, if you do this, you do that, you do this, you'll improve your situation and put yourself in the best position. David went away and he did lots of interrogation, lots of investigation, and he came up with a plan for this couple that actually made sure that they were in the right position in moving to Spain. But he also left the door open and made the arrangements flexible so they could actually return to the UK in the future if that's what they wanted to do. As it now comes to pass, that office, or we opened an office in Marbella, and that was the first overseas office of Blevins Franks. That was quickly followed by a number of other offices around Spain, because back in the day, lots of Brits in the 70s used to jump on the cheapest airline they could and get out to Spain and come back with their donkeys and kiss me quick hats, and that gave them the fuel to want to go and live there full time. So the majority of Blevins Franks offices to begin with were in Spain. We then ventured into France, then into Portugal, and then latterly into Cyprus and Malta. When I joined Blevins Franks, there was just 2 of us in France. So we've moved a long way. And now keep our administration centre in Malta. We have an office in London, and we have another 22 offices around Europe, all manned by people who live locally, which we to this day believe is the right way forward, rather than dealing with people who fly in and fly out and who don't understand the problems that our clients in country face each and every day. So Tom, can you tell us, what do you think the listeners are going to get out of these podcasts going forward?
I think that anybody who has listened to us on Riviera Radio can expect more of the same. So we'll be covering all of the greatest hits, including succession and inheritance planning, capital gains tax planning, income tax planning, wealth tax, exit tax. We'll be looking at how these interact with the UK system as well, because I know a lot of our listeners are originally coming from the UK, and really just delving into detail in each of these areas. And I suppose that what we're looking to do is address some of the common misconceptions or preconceptions that people might have about France. A lot of people assume that France is very punitive in terms of taxation, and it's true that the French system is complicated, but actually as long as you do the right planning, you can actually find that France is more favourable than the UK. So we'll be looking at that.
Okay. James, as I've just described, Blevins Franks has seen a lot of change over the last 50 years and especially over the last 10 years. I think that sort of mirrors what goes on in the world outside of Blevins Franks. I presume that we're going to be all over that during these podcasts going forward.
Yeah, so we'll try and keep it concise and brief, but interesting. If finance can ever be interesting, but yeah, we'll try and keep it poignant and go over the different things that change from a French and the UK perspective. As you say, there's changes all the time from a UK and French tax side. We're also living and breathing amongst you, so we understand the different difficulties of France, and we can just highlight things to be aware of over time, really. So yeah, I would say like and subscribe and follow along, and we'll try and keep it as interesting and light-hearted as we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the first edition of the Expat Chapter Blevins Franks podcast. As James just said, please like and subscribe us wherever you download your podcasts. And if you have any questions that you want to place to us for future broadcasts, and maybe some content, if you feel that you would like to know more about something, give us a lead. Contact us at www.blevinsfranks.com, and we'll react to whatever you think is topical for you and your fellow French residents or would-be French residents. Next week, one of the key topics at the moment that is really interesting for lots of British expatriates is the French government's ratification of re-ratification of Brussels 4. So join us for that next week, and we'll explore what that means to you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.